Hello, welcome to the gospel. On this channel, you are going to get soul lifting message, faith content, and video that will help you to grow your spiritual life. Remember, don't forget to subscribe this channel for more new video updates.
This is the reason whenever a man is in need, God does something. He creates an opportunity. Because until you use what is given you, it will not work. I want to read something to you from the Bible in a second. Are you hearing me? 1 Kings, let me read to you. 1 Kings chapter 17. And I'm reading from verse number 9. You ready? Here the Lord was talking to Elijah, the prophet. The Lord had been feeding him through birds. Can you imagine that? He sent birds, ravens, to bring him food. God sent birds in a time of famine. He sent birds to feed him. And he was residing by the brook. Think about it. Everywhere else was dry. But there was water in the brook. And the birds were feeding him. Finally, the Lord stopped the birds from coming and let the brook dry. Why? You'd see it now. From verse 9, arise, get thee to Zarephath, which belongeth to Zidon, and dwell there. Behold, I have commanded a widow woman there to sustain thee. Uh-oh. The Lord said, I have commanded a widow woman there in Zarephath to sustain you, to sustain the prophet. So he arose and went to Zarephath. And when he came to the gates of the city, behold, a widow woman was there. Elijah didn't know this woman before. But the prophets often put on something, a certain kind of garment, and you could recognize who they were. And here he says, the woman was there gathering of sticks, and he called to her and said, fetch me, I pray thee, a little water in a vessel that I may drink. And as she was going to fetch it, he called to her and said, bring me, I pray thee, a morsel of bread in thine hand. And she said, as the Lord thy God liveth, I have not a cake, but a handful of meal in a barrel, and a little oil in a cruz. And behold, I am gathering 2 sticks, that I may go in and dress it for me and my son, that we may eat it and die. In other words, this is all we have, and we have no more hope after this. And Elijah said unto her, fear not, go and do as thou hast said. In other words, go bake the cake, but make me thereof. Do some for me first. Think about it. You would think this prophet is terrible. He said, make me a little cake first and bring it unto me, and after make for thee and for thy son. It's not enough for 2. And yet the prophet says, make for yourself and your son after I have eaten. But you see, here is something beautiful. For he adds something to it that changes everything. For thus saith the Lord God of Israel, the barrel of meal shall not waste, neither shall the cruse of oil fail, until the day that the Lord sendeth rain upon the earth. What's happening? Did God tell Elijah this? Did God tell Elijah this? No. So why is Elijah saying, thus saith the Lord God of Israel? Are you following this? Did God tell Elijah that the cruse of oil will not fail? No, he didn't say that. He said, I've commanded a widow woman to sustain thee. That's all he said. So Elijah comes. What does Elijah have? He's a prophet of God. What does a prophet do? There are two things that a prophet does. Number one, a prophet has revelations. Okay? From God. And so he has to speak what a prophet speaks for God. A prophet speaks for God. He speaks in the name of the Lord. The Lord doesn't have to tell him, say this. They are given a right. That's the power of a prophet. They are given a right. The word is delivered to them. The power of the word. Now here's what I want you to see. What was God looking at when he dried up the brook and stopped the ravens? The story tells us about this woman. Elijah goes to her house. She does that food, that cake for Elijah. He eats, and truly, the barrel of meal doesn't waste. The cruse of oil doesn't fail. It goes on, but something terrible happens to this woman. In the process of time, her son, her only son, remember she was a widow, her only son died. She died, he died. And when he died, she wept. But something, Elijah was there. And the Bible tells us Elijah cried unto the Lord and brought the boy back to life. Now, who was sustaining the other? Let's see. Let's see. God said to the prophet, I have commanded a widow woman to sustain you in Zarephath. So go there. The prophet goes and finds the woman is a poor woman. She's not a wealthy woman at all. Oh, God doesn't need you to be rich before he tells you to use your seed. All that this woman had was that meal. That barrel of meal and cruse of oil. That's all she had to bake her last cake for herself and her son. Her life was into that. She said, after this, we are dead. The prophet says, here's what you do. Turn it into a seed. Give it to me. Turn it into a seed. I told you without a seed, you're finished. The woman knew she had no seed. Now the prophet says, look at the future. Give it to me as a seed. If you will turn that thing in your hand into a seed, your future is secure. I told you without a seed, it's the end. All you see is death. But what is it you have? God said to Moses, what do you have in your hand? He's before the Red Sea. What do you have in your hand? He said, a rod. He could have said nothing and passed the rod from one hand to the other. He said, nothing. Like you say, Pastor Chris, what do you have in your hand? And I say, nothing. Because my mind might be thinking, what do you think I'm holding? I may not be with the presence of mind that anything matters. I think you mean money? No, I don't have any money in my hand. And I'm passing the microphone from one hand to the other. But Moses says, I have a microphone. You see it? What do you have? Don't call it nothing. What do you have? Don't call it nothing. What do you have? Don't call it nothing. Turn it into a seed. Put your see the vision right inside it. Light, truth, seed, and your prosperity secure. Light, truth, seed, and your productivity is unending. Unending. Convert that thing into a seed. You're about to see the greatest explosion of God's power on your behalf that you've ever seen in your life. Something far bigger than you ever dreamed.
Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. God bless you.